Welcome to Dragon Boating for Life and Laughs. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know it's been a long series of webinars, and we're hoping this will be a good use of your time. Some of you are familiar with dragon boating, either as blind people or people who have mobility disabilities, but there's some that don't know about it. And let's start with what dragon boating isn't. And Lisa, why don't you describe what we have? It's not.
Well, we have a cute little picture on the screen right now. It's brightly colored sailboats, and each one has an adorable little dragon in it. But this is not dragon boating.
It's not, because in part because it has sails, and we don't use sails, we paddle. And while the dragon boat paddlers can be cute, we're not dragons. The name of dragon boating comes from the fact that when you're competing, you have a dragon on the head on the front of the boat, and you have the tail at the end. So when you're in competition, you have this decorative part. Now, dragon boating is a very old sport. It goes back more than 2,000 years in South China. In 1976, it became an international sport. And maybe you can describe a little bit of what the boat looks like and the different types, Lisa.
Okay. So a dragon boat is a very long canoe. They are about 44 feet long. And the width of the canoe is just a bit wide enough for two people to sit next to each other on the seat. So in a traditional dragon boat, the standard size dragon boat carries a crew of 22. And of the 22, 20 of those are paddlers. And so they sit two to a bench, one behind each other over 10 benches. And then in addition to the people that are paddling the boat with a paddle, we have what we call a drummer or a caller. And that person sits up high on the front of the boat and looking at the crew as they proceed, and they beat a drum to help communicate to the rest of the crew what the timing is that's being set by the paddlers that are in the first row. And then the other important person that we have on a dragon boat crew is we call them the steers person or the tiller, or sometimes you'll hear them called a sweep. So a dragon boat is powered by the paddlers, but it's steered by this person, the tiller in the back. He has a very large oar. And in most dragon boats, it sticks out to the side on a little board. But in some of the really big dragon boats, it sticks right out the back of the tail. And so the paddle that we use is like a traditional paddle for canoes. It has a T-top on it and a shaft and a blade. And the blade, we just try to get that in the water as much as we can to power it. We use this boat to race in what we call a sprint race. It's a 500-meter race is typically the length that we do. And really fast crews can move that boat 500 meters in less than 2 minutes. The average is around 2:15, 2:20, somewhere in there. And this decorative head on the front and the decorative tail on the back, we don't tend to carry those in practice. We only put them on for festivals and races because they're very fragile. Am I missing anything, Susan?
I think that works well. We always wear vests so that if the boat does turn over, which doesn't happen very often, we will float. That's a critical thing. You can't race without a variation of a life vest, and it is a lot of it is working together as a team. Go to the next slide. One of the things that when you look at dragon boating, what was really exciting about it is really accessible. If you have a body of water near you, there's likely a team, and teams usually will have equipment that you can borrow to see if you want to try it out and if it's for you. It's an easy to learn thing because you can get in the water and start going to begin with. You don't have to have a tremendous number of skills to begin with, and you will improve over time. So you are in the water just to start with, and it's a lot of fun. It's also very inclusive, and why we say it's for life and for laughs is it's something you can do at any age, at any fitness level, at any ability, any skill. You can get in and be very competitive and go into international competitions. You can go for fun. I got involved in dragon boating because I'm a cancer survivor, and one of the things that they've noted through studies, particularly with breast cancer, that if you get good exercise, the rates of recurrence are much lower, and your ability to tolerate treatments is much better, which is no surprise, I think, to anybody who's on this call. It is something that they have clinical data to support. And so you will see teams of cancer survivors frequently because, particularly in areas where there's treatment centers or a lot of people, it's a great way to get back in the water. And you can go in when you are in the middle of chemo and you can barely paddle. And it can be all the way up to, a lot of people will go from those teams onto really super competitive teams. So it's something you can do on our team, which is called Survivor Sake, and Lisa is a coach of our team. Um, we have people in their 80s who, frankly, I would not want to meet in a dark alley. They're pretty tough people. In fact, one year when they had a festival, which was one that included dressing up, they went as the women with the dragon tattoos. And they kind of scared some of the other people, but it's a lot of fun. It's a good group. And this is a true team sport. It is something that everybody participates. Speed is dependent on your cooperation and your synchronization. So there's no stars, you're a team and you pull together. And I find, especially with the survivor teams, that there's really a sense of just supporting each other. And as a blind person, I had always wanted to do the team that was up in Baltimore, but for me, I also have MS, so the heat was not possible. So I went into the survivor team initially as the only blind person. We got Wendy now hooked in, which is great. And it was just like, okay, you can't see, let's just do this. There was no sense of judgment or fear around disability. And, a lot of people hadn't been around a lot of people with disabilities. It's a team. And as a team, you pull together. Your strengths help other people, their strengths help you, and you work together. If you go to the next slide, it's very healthy sport. And it's something that helps with your cardiovascular system and core muscle groups in particular. You are always working on new skills. Your mind is focused totally on the race or in the practices. It is a very mindful thing. You're out in nature and you're in a situation where people are socially supporting each other if there's not a pandemic going on. It is, and even actually during the pandemic, people are socially supporting each other remotely. But it is a great opportunity to get exercise, whether you're a person who is just a natural athlete, which if anybody who knows me, they know that I've never been called a natural athlete. I may have been called a lot of things, but not that. You can get involved, you can develop skills, you can get stronger. And if you want, you can be competitive and you can travel nationally and internationally to do it. And when we look at recreational dragon boating, it's something that you can do. It's not, again, dragons sitting in a boat with parasols, having picnics, maybe having a little wine. You might do that outside the dragon boating, but it is a fun thing to do as a practice. It's something that a lot of teams will try out. If you go, it's a great way to get outside. It is low impact and pretty adaptive when you're dealing with a lot of the teams. They will say, if your left shoulder doesn't work, you will paddle on the right and somebody will fill in. If you have just a bad day, one of the things that's wonderful about when you're going through treatment, somebody will turn to you and say, you look a little green. Maybe take a break. And sometimes that really helps for those of us who tend to be very um, oriented toward goals, I guess. It's a great way to form and grow new friends. It's an opportunity to meet a lot of people that you might not meet at work or at school or in your neighborhood. It's so much fun. It really is a great opportunity. We have people who are just a kick to be around. Um, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to ask Lisa to jump in on the competitive aspect and also tell us just a little bit, Lisa, about how you got engaged in dragon boating and what you find exciting.
So I have been dragon boating for, oh, there's a huge echo. I've been dragon boating for about 15 years now, and I've been helping coach Survivor for, I think it would have been my 4th season, except for the shutdown from COVID. And I started just because it seemed like a great way to get outside, but it didn't have, like Susan said, it's low impact, right? So there's no running. It's easy on your joints, and you can sit in the boat depending on how you're, if you, like she said, if you have problems, you can sit somewhere that doesn't aggravate that problem. Uh, I had never really been that involved in team sports. I was the kid that avoided PE at all costs, but the friendships that you form on this boat and the fact that it doesn't depend on strength. There is no strong person that drives the team like you have pitchers in baseball and quarterbacks in football. It entirely depends on the perfect timing and synchronization of the people on the boat working together. And that causes levels of friendships and cooperation to build that really attracted me. So I always like to say that dragon boating is a sport that anybody can do the first time that they get in the boat, but it's something that can take you a lifetime to do the best that you can. I'm always learning, and I hope to keep learning till I can no longer get in a dragon boat. So Susan talked a little bit about recreational dragon boating. Dragon boating can also be competitive, but competitive is different for everybody. So for instance, I know some recreational teams that when they go to their local festival, they are just as competitive as the people that go to the World Nations race every 2 years and race for their team of their country. So it's just all about the scope of what it is that you're wanting to do. But most people that are in dragon boating are in it for the racing because as a sprint sport, it's incredibly exciting and fun. There's a lot of noise and fuss, and it's just exhilarating to be out there, but it's also challenging. It takes kind of a lot of fitness and mental fortitude to make it through those 500 meters. That 2 minutes feels like a long time in that last 10, 20, 50 meters. It's a great experience for new paddlers. Very often you'll see in your local dragon boat festivals that there will almost always be a community division, and that is for friends from the same corporation will make a team to go, or all the doctors from your local hospital will go, and they have a way of experiencing the sport of dragon boating within a very short window. Most of those teams will form up and they might get 3 or 4 practices in a dragon boat before race day, and then they're racing against other community teams. And even at that level where they've only had 3 weeks of practice, it is just funny to see how competitive they are. It is absolutely competitive racing for them. And sometimes they find they really enjoy it, and then they start to look for a local team so they can join up and do it more regularly. If you're on the other end of the competitive spectrum, it is a great way for top athletes to push themselves for excellence, because you really have to develop your aerobic strength, your aerobic endurance in order to compete at that level. And that takes a lot of training off the boat to be at the top of your game.
So the training can be year round, or often is if you're competitive.
We are fortunate in the Pacific Northwest in that we are able to keep our boats on the water all year round. So there are practices going out in the winter. They go out at night even. Some of the best dragon boat paddling, I think, is in the winter at night because the calm and the quiet and the lack of boats on the lake. If you're on the East Coast or you're in the north central United States, you're probably going to find that your teams don't have their boats on in the winter because the water freezes. And so then a lot of times they have to wait for the thaw, and they might put their boats back in April and train until about September or so. But then in the off season, they aren't just sitting on their rear ends, they're in the gym on the rowing machines, or they're running, or they're doing weight training to keep up at the top of their competition.
So who races and what are the races like, Lisa?
So the answer to who races is everybody. And dragon boat racing is divided into 3 dragon boat divisions. There's a division for women, where everybody on the boat is a woman, and then there's what they call mixed, which is no more than 10 men and 10 women. And then they have a category called open, which is no limitations at all on the boat makeup. And a lot of times you will see those packed full of the strongest men available, and they are the fastest boats you've ever seen. And within each division, there are a number of classes, usually divided by age, but we also have some special classes. The premier class tends to be your athletes under 40. And in that division, we also have your U24 and U18. Those are your college and middle high school age kids. And then we start getting into the senior division. So senior A is if you're 40 and over. Senior B is if you're 50 and over. Senior C is if you're 60 and over. And if you happen to be like 55, you could race in B and C, right? So it's all above the age that you are. Then we have cancer divisions. There's divisions for survivors of breast cancer only. And that is, you will see races in breast cancer at nearly every local festival. And this is because back in the 80s, a pair of doctors in Canada did a study sort of break, they were trying to bust the myth that when you've had breast cancer and radical mastectomy, that you shouldn't exercise your upper body because it can cause lymphedema. And these doctors did not believe this. And so they trained a team for 6 months to race in dragon boats. And that team, they called it A Breast in a Boat out of Vancouver, Canada. That team still races today. And something like 20 of their 22 original members are still on the team. But what they found is not only does upper body exercise not cause lymphedema, but it also helps with your mental, the team connection and the working together had a mental impact. And that's related to what Susan said about how it decreases the chance you're going to have a recurrence. Then recently they introduced a division for survivors of any cancer, which was nice because our team is any kind of cancer, and they're very often shut out of races because they don't have breast cancer. So, I mean, we've actually been at races before and been like, what, we got the wrong cancer? And some of those cancers are just as devastating as breast cancer. And so it's nice to see that division recognized. And then recently, we had a new division come in, and they call that division the Paradragons. I absolutely hate that they call it that, but what can I say? The International Dragon Boat Association has decided that's what they'll call them. The
And it's not 2
Paradragons.
dragons.
No, that's right. So the Paradragons are for people who have some form of physical, psychological, neurological, sensory, developmental, or intellectual disability. And because there's such a wide variation across all of those things, so like a person with post-traumatic stress disorder is going to have a different physical ability than somebody who's missing a leg, right? They have a point system to help ensure fair competition across that division. And so they have a class there for athletes that all have a disability, and a class where half of the athletes have a disability and the other half are their helpers. So you see this a lot in low vision teams where they have their sighted assistants on the boat with them. And then there's a division for the whole team has the same disability. and so what they're trying to do is grow this going forward. So the national competition is scheduled for this October, and there are rules that govern dragon boating that prevent you from just picking up random people and stuffing them in your team because they're ringers at the last minute. But they've released that regulation for the paradragons so that teams can form across the nation to race at our national competition. We have a national coordinator that's trying to grow that division, and I have her email address if anybody wants to have it. I can give it to them. So that's just growing. I think we had a national race last year, and there were 3 teams there, and it was quite something to see them racing on the water. Yeah. Any questions?
If you're interested in it, you can participate in a variety of ways. With the paradragons, they're more likely to have adaptive equipment. But there's nothing that precludes you from joining any dragon boat team.
That's right.
If you don't have a specialized team in your area. And there also are blind teams that will compete with each other as well.
Right. So on our team, we have Susan, and then in the team that I was on before, we had another blind paddler, and we had a woman who had survived polio and she couldn't walk. So the other interesting thing about dragon boating is that once you get the stroke down, you have control over your workout through the period of time, right? So if you're a beginner, you can still get a real workout just by trying to keep up with the timing and learning how to get your form down. And if you're a competitive person, then you're using that workout time to get a little bit more oomph in your stroke and try to figure out how to pull the water more efficiently. With the blind paddlers, I know Susan probably can speak more to how it feels to be paddling if you're vision impaired. But when the boat is timed together and every paddle is hitting the water at the same time and everybody is pulling that bowl of water away, the boat makes a little jump that you can feel in the boat. And every stroke it jumps. And that jump will tell you what the timing is if you cannot see the person in front of you and watch their paddle go up and down. And another thing that I have noticed, because my coach has done this and I do it sometimes too, is we'll have the whole boat close their eyes and paddle with their eyes closed. And the purpose to that exercise is to make it so that people can hear what the water is doing and not rely on a visual cue to know when to put their paddle in. And when the boat is timed up, you can hear the splash of the exit and the little whiz as the paddle goes forward and the water drips off the blade when you go to your setup, and the little kind of plunge that you hear when people set their paddle to pull. So those help. Is there anything else, Susan, that helps you?
I think that when you're in sync, it's the most amazing feeling. There's just an instinctive thing that takes over. However, when you're getting there, which is often when you're new or when the team is new working together, people will say a little faster or help out. So, and that's true whether you can see or not, because getting to know how to do the stroke is so hard.
Dragon boating, it's a bit like a long boat, and you're all sitting and you have 2 paddles basically.
Yes, you keep one paddle. Each person has a paddle.
And then the drum is another cue, but we don't use the drum in practice. We only use that in races. So really it's these other cues that are more helpful during practice.
And they will sometimes, when you are going out of sync, they will put a call in to move faster, and that helps you get into sync. They'll call it a power move.
And sometimes the coach will count it for you to help get everybody back together. And
so it's a lot of fun. It is amazing though how much it just you kind of become one with the boat, and are just an extension of it, and the whole team is like that. So it's an incredible feeling. And maybe when we get to the Q&A, we can have some of the folks who have been on some of the blind teams talk about some of the adaptations they've done as well.
Right.
Susan, this is Sherry. There is a person that's had their hand raised for some time, Jerry, and I don't know if that needs to wait or.
Jerry, did you have a question?
Although now unmuted.
Yes, I did. I actually had two. Other than the fact you have two people sitting next to each other, what is the other difference between dragon boating and regular
And now
rowing that, race rowing?
Oh, that's a really good
Also,
question.
Also, second is how do we find a group in our area? So I live just outside of Detroit. How would I find a group in this Michigan area?
Okay, yeah, I have how to find a team a little bit later in the presentation, but about the difference between dragon boating and rowing, the difference between dragon boating is that you're using the paddle to propel the board forward, and you as a paddler are sitting facing the direction in which you are racing. The only person that does not sit in the direction that you are racing is the drummer, because they have to face the team in order for the team to hear them. In rowing, you're sitting with your back to the direction that you're going, and you're using a different implement to move the water. You're using a long oar that sticks out to the side, and you pull on it in order to move the water. We use a paddle where we have to kind of reach forward and put that paddle down into the water, and then use our core strength and our rotation to pull the water towards us so we can move the boat forward. Can
And
we?
I think Susan got muted by accident.
Okay, and I see some other questions. We're almost through here, so why don't we hold the questions till the end? I have a little video here, and I'm going to go through it twice so that everybody can kind of experience it. It's a video of the Canadian National Premier Team. That's people under 40 racing at a national championship, I believe in Hungary. And I'm just gonna, for the people that can see it, I'm gonna walk through and sort of explain what's going on. And then I'm gonna go through again, and I'm gonna clap along to the cadence so that the people that can't see the video can kind of experience what the paddling timing is like. So I'm just gonna play this. And you can see, if you can see the video, they're at the start line. They've just started off, and they're taking strokes. Takes a little bit to get that boat up and moving. And then they're paddling at a fast and furious rate that they can't sustain, but they're just trying to get a little bit of a lead. Now you can kind of see them settling into a stroke that they can maintain for their 500 meters. And the camera is on the steers person, so he's checking out his competition every so often as we go by. You can see that boat next to them is pretty close, not close enough. And as he's going, he'll shout to his team. You might hear him. That's what we call a power call, which is he's asking the team to put a little more oomph in.
Lisa, we can't hear the audio.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, well, when he's
Yeah, I
yelling
can't hear
is,
the audio.
give me 5 now. Okay, so he's moving along. So I'm going to back it up again so you guys can hear. Can you hear me clapping if I do this?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let me back it up so you can hear
Loud
that
and clear.
then. So a dragon boat, when we take off from the start line, we have to be able to take that giant boat and get it what they call planed onto the water surface. So a dragon boat naturally sits a little heavy in the back. And so when you start from a dead stop, you have to be able to move that boat fast enough to get it up on a plane so that it can travel at a good pace. And so those first 6 strokes to do that are quite difficult. They're hard and they're very strong strokes, and they take a long time. And then you'll see it. Oh, hold on a second. I'm being impeded by the Zoom thing. Okay. So again, I'm gonna, if I can get this. Oh, annoying. Okay. I'm just gonna clap. Here we go. Here they go to start. Fast to get going. Settling it in, settling it in. Settling it in, just pulling strong, and then pretty soon he says, that's it, we're in it. Now, give me 5. And they just really deep, strong strokes. Go, he says. Give me 5 now, go. Big rotation. He's reminding them to rotate. Reach it up. You can hear that drum. I need more. They're getting close. Pretty soon.